Alrighty, guys. In this one, we're going to talk about how to print symbols, strings, and variables all together. All right. So what we want to do is we want to recreate what's in this comment, and we want to print this to the screen. We do not want to print this true as part of a string. We want to print this as a Boolean. And the way we're going to determine the value of the Boolean is whether 3 is actually less than 7. All right, so let's start off. So we're going to write a print statement. And inside of this print statement, we want to print out 3 greater than 7 is true. And like we said, this is not part of the string. This should be a Boolean value. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off printing a string. All right, I know you're maybe tempted to print this 3 as an integer, but we want to actually see these exact symbols and values on the screen. So we literally just type them out like this: 3 greater than 7. That's just a string. It's not actually going to do the computation. It's not going to equate to true or false. It's literally just the symbols: 3 space less than space 7, just symbols. Okay, so now what we want to do is we probably can add the is in there as well, right? Because is just a string. Now, when we get to this part that says true, we're not going to hard code that in there. We're going to actually have Python tell us, is 3 less than 7? If it is, it will print true. And if it's not, it'll print false. So what we're going to do is put a comma in here because we're done printing out this string. Now we're going to print something else. What we're going to do is we're going to throw the mathematical equation right here in the print statement. 3 less than 7. All right, and we're going to give it a run. All right, so what's happening here is that Python is actually determining, is 3 greater than 7 over here. If you do not put quotation marks around it, if you just put the values straight in, it's going to actually perform the equation, determine if this is true or false. All right, and if you had addition in here, it would perform the addition. If you had subtraction, it would perform the subtraction. This part over here that we want to actually print to the screen has to be a string, all right? Because if you just did it like this, I see people tempted to do this. So they want to put it like this without the first part being a string. Well, even if this was a string, which that would, you'd have to throw it in here like this, or it would literally throw an error, and you'd have to put a comma over here. So it'd be a lot of work to be wrong, but if you were, it would do the equation, the string, and the equation again, right? And for this first part right here, we don't want it to perform the equation yet. All we want it to do is just print some stuff to the screen. So that's why we wrap it in quotation marks. All right, and this will work perfectly fine. We're just saying, hey, print a little bit of a string, right? Then next, print a little bit of a string again, and then next, perform this equation. All right, so let's do it again. Let's make it be something that's false this time. All right, let's say 100 is greater than 1,000. And we'll say is always, and this should be false, right? Because 100 is not greater than 1,000. All right, so we'll do a print statement. Inside, we will have all this part right here can be one string together, right? Because all that is just literally words that we want to print to the screen. So let's do that. Now I'm going to put the comma in there. If you haven't already noticed, or if I haven't said it, the comma, when it prints out, it puts a space wherever it is. So whenever it goes to print to the screen, this would be a space here. Okay, I don't know if I told y'all that, but you don't need to put a space in here at the end of this string because the comma is going to do it for you. All right, now we type in the part that we want Python to evaluate. So is 100 greater than 1000? We know that to be false, and let's make sure Python says the same thing. And it does, right? 100 greater than 1000 is always false. So you can see that depending on whether you want to print something to the screen or whether you want Python to actually perform the mathematical equation is going to be different, right? If you just want it printed to the screen, you use a string. If you want it to do the equation or perform the math, you put it as is. Let's do another one. Let's allow the user to give two numbers. All right, and we are going to print out adding and subtracting the values. All right, so one thing we need to do first, obviously, is create some variables, and we are going to, it doesn't say whether these numbers are going to be integers or floats, but I'm going to make them integers. All right, and then we have to call the input function to allow the user to type something in when the program runs. And inside of here, we need to put the string that we want to print to the screen because we have to tell the user what it is we want them to do. If you remember in an earlier video, I said the user is not going to actually look at the code. They're not going to be able to see the code. All they're going to see is whatever the program does when it runs. So if you don't tell the user what they're supposed to do, they're going to have no clue what it is they're supposed to do, and they're probably going to say this program is terrible, it doesn't work right, I don't like it, right? So first I'm going to say to the user, enter a number. I'm going to assign that to num1, and then enter another number, that'll be num2. All right, I'm going to write a print function here because I'm going to print out adding these two values together. First things first, I want to put my first number. So I'm going to put num1. Now I want to print to the screen a plus sign because I want to say num1 plus num2 is, and then whatever the sum of those values are. So I'm going to put literally the plus sign as a string right in there. All right, now I'm going to put num2 because I want num2 to print out. Now I want the equal sign to print to the screen, so I'm going to say equals. All right. At this point, I want to put the actual sum of the two numbers. So I type in the math without any quotation marks. All right. And just to tell you guys, you can put an empty print statement in here if you want, or you could use the new line character. So if you use the new line character, I'll do both. It has to be wrapped in quotation marks. It's a backslash and an N. And what that's going to do is that's going to make a blank line printout before any of this prints. All right, and you're like, why would I want to print a blank line? Well, sometimes if you don't print a blank line or a separator between your lines of code, when it goes to print, it can be really hard to read. All right, so let's take a look. I'm going to run it. And it did these first two lines again. And now, because of the input function, it's waiting on us as the user to enter a value. I'm going to say 20. I'm going to hit enter. Enter another number, 5. Press enter. All right, and what happened? It skipped two lines, one for the blank print statement and one for the new line character. And then it printed out the actual string, 20 plus 5 equals 25. So if you remember, this was a variable, this is a string, this is a variable, string, and this is the result of a mathematical calculation. All right, and if you notice that new line character did actually cause a blank space right here, which is interesting. So maybe I don't use this new line character here and I just use my blank space up there. All right, and we can run it again. The beauty of using those two variables, num1 and num2, is that these values can be whatever we want them to be every time the program runs. Right? So I'm actually not going to do the subtraction one. You guys should be able to figure that out from what you've got here. And hopefully this made sense to you guys. It should help you.